my name's Keely and I'm from a Bound Bindery, and I'm going to show you all the tools I use for bookbinding. Now, I will preface this and say that these are just what works for me. So you might find different brands, different versions. First thing you'll need is a cutting mat. So this is what my pink mat is here. This is so that you can cut wherever you are. You're not going to cut through your table. Next thing you'll need is a ruler. I like the corkback rulers because they stop you from slipping. So when you're kind of lining something up, it just grips nice and firm to whatever you're cutting on. Next up is a box cutter. So this is just a really cheap one you can get from either a hardware store, or you can get it from a craft shop as well. Super sharp, so make sure it's always kind of locked away. This one you can snap off the little blades here, so you can use it quite a few times because they do get fairly blunt. With cutting, I also use one of these. So this is a rotary cutter, and this is for my book cloth and for fabric. So you just push this down. I just find it cuts a bit of a straighter and cleaner line with the fabric. So again, this is probably optional, but I recommend using it. You also need a pair of scissors. Literally any scissors work fine. Same with a pen, just something so you can, there's lots of measuring and marking involved. So use whatever you want. I've seen some people recommend mechanical pencils. That's something that I'll look into doing, but for now, literally any pen works. This is called a bone folder, and this is really great for any craft that's using paper. You use it to help fold. You use this to make your creases in the hinge and to smooth and flatten. So this is a really handy tool. Again, you can make it work without this. So I've seen people using the ends of pens to kind of smooth things down and make their hinges nice and crisp, but this definitely makes the job a bit easier. Next up, we have our paintbrushes. You can use whatever paintbrush you want, but there is a lot of gluing involved. So that's what I really like about these silicone brushes, is that the glue dries and then you can just peel it off. So I mean, here's a little bit from last time I was doing it. It peels off super easily. So they're really easy to clean and reuse. So I recommend doing that. If you do use any other kind of paintbrush with fibers, just soak it in some water overnight and the glue should rinse out the next day. The last couple of things I'll show you here when it comes to tools are these. Again, these are really optional. They're very handy to have. So this is called a hinge spacer. So what you'll see in my videos is when I'm putting the space between my spine piece and the front and back boards, I line this up and it just helps make sure everything is squared against it. And I find that 1 centimeter is the perfect size for most books. Sometimes I'd go a little bit smaller, like an 8 millimeter, so you can keep that in mind. Same with the corners. So this is what I put on the corner of my book cloth, and I cut along here to cut my corners. Again, you'll find a size that works for you. I find this is really handy. Again, you don't need these. You can just eyeball it and cut the corners off, but just a handy tool if you did want to go the whole way. So that's all of the tools. I'll push these to the side for now, and I'll start showing you some more of the materials. So these are the things that you will use to kind of cover your books. These are the things you'll reuse time and time again, and these are the things that will kind of go into each book. So one of the first things you'll need is actually end paper. So end paper is when you first open your hardcover book. It's the page that attaches from your hardcover onto your actual book. You can either just use plain cardstock, or you can get these really nice packs that come in heaps of different styles. This is just one that I had on hand, and there are so many beautiful options here. So you can go wild with these. You can be as creative as you want. I've seen people make their own, which is really cool, but heaps of options if you just want to use something that's already available. The next thing you'll need is some mull. This is something that I think is not optional. I think this is really important to have good quality mull, because this is what actually attaches your book to your cover. So the paper, your end paper sandwiches your book against the hardcover, and this is what gives it strength. So it comes in these really long rolls that I just cut down to size. Again, it's just like a really, really thick woven material. And yeah, you get lots of glue in it. This is what gives your book a lot of that structure. Another thing you'll need is something to cover your book with. So I've been making my own book cloth. So this is one that I made recently. So this is, just a blue book cloth here. I'll show how I do this in a different video completely, but I essentially just use fabric, heat and bond, and then some tissue paper on the other side. But you can buy pre-made book cloth that's probably much easier if you're starting out. You can also use, there are so many different ways to cover a book. So if you want to look into a few different options. I've not done anything other than book cloth, but there are heaps of tutorials out there if you're wanting to do something with paper, do a wrap cover. I'll be showing you kind of how to use book cloth. One of the most important things you'll need in this is chipboard. So the chipboard I get comes in these huge, you can't even see it here, huge sheets. You can get chipboard, Davy board, it comes in all shapes and sizes. This is probably the most inconvenient way of doing it, but it's very cost effective buying it in big sheets. And then I will cut these down to size to make my book board. Or you can get it delivered where it's pre-cut to size, which is definitely easier to use, but can be a bit more expensive. So just have a look around and see what options you have in your area. But I find this works really well for what I do. Another important thing you'll need is glue. So I use this glue from Traditional Bookbinding, which is an acid-free PVA glue. So what you want is acid-free or pH neutral. This is probably best practice when it comes to bookbinding. It just means it won't turn your pages yellow, and it's much longer lasting than a lot of the other just standard PVA glue options out there. But again, if you're just starting out and wanting to see if you like the hobby, definitely you can use whatever PVA glue is in your area or that you might have lying around at home. And kind of go for this stuff if you are wanting to do something that's maybe a little bit longer lasting. This is some parchment paper, Teflon paper, baking paper, whatever you want to call it. There is so much gluing again that you do throughout this whole process. This is just really handy to keep your area clean. I always have a couple of fresh sheets on hand so that I can make sure I'm gluing onto this. This will peel off whatever it's kind of glued to. I'll also show you this, and this is completely optional. This is what I use for my ribbons and book charms for this process. Again, you can use whatever ribbons you want, whatever book charms you want. This is just a few that I have on hand. So this is a 9mm ribbon. I also use one that's about 12mm for some of my other binds, and I find they're the best sizes. For each of those you will need, if you're doing that, you'll need ribbon clasps. So this is what attaches your charm to your ribbon bookmark. And here are just heaps of different charms that I've kind of collected in my time. So the little crane there. This is completely optional. You don't have to do ribbons, you don't have to do bookmarks. That's completely personal preference. With your cover design, you can use lots of different things to decorate it, but what you'll see I do is using heat transfer vinyl on top of my finished case. So this is material that you cut out with a Cricut or with a silhouette machine, any sort of cutting machine really, and then you iron on or use a heat press to transfer the design onto your bookcase. I find that unfortunately Cricut brand has been the best, especially if you're wanting to work with metallics. They are notorious for being very hard to work with. You can melt them, they don't transfer properly, they'll kind of peel up when you try to pull off the transfer case. So I think that it's worth spending the extra money to get the Cricut brand, especially if you're working with metallics. But I have linked a few other brands that have worked well for their heat transfer vinyl. Last but not least is you'll need something to press your book overnight. So I actually made my own book press. So this is just using 2 chopping boards, some bolts, and some wing nut screws here. And so this is super handy. I love having this available. This is what I use most of the time. But again, really, you don't need to have a book press. You can use, I've seen people use hand clamp or C-clamp, that you can kind of press your book between 2 bits of card or 2 chopping boards still. You can also just put something heavy on it overnight. So you can use, I've seen people use a brick, or you can use some other books that you have laying around, just something heavy enough to hold everything together. And you'll leave that in place either overnight or for at least a few hours. And then that's when you'll have your final book. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. I'm gonna do a series showing you how I rebind a book, and you can follow along. These are the tools that I'll be using. If you're not sure, I also have everything linked in the description below, so you can go through. I have links to everything that I use. They're not affiliate links, I don't make any money off those. It's literally just a list of the exact places I've bought them. But as I've mentioned, if you're in a different country or if you have access to different things, as long as you can get the same job done, it doesn't matter what you use. This is just what I find works best for me. So follow along and I'll show you how to rebind a book in the next video.